After lots of cleaning, I got all the gasket surfaces cleaned up. And you can see, I mean, there's still some staining on it, but the gasket does not go right there. Everywhere where the gasket goes, I got it all cleaned up. And then that's the oil pump, that's where the tube goes. And I I took a pick and got the old O-ring out. Seems to be the same as the new one. So we are ready to put our pickup tube back in, and then we will put our rear main in. Also cleaned up this. Just have the little green Scotch-Brite. So we're going to take I'm going to take some of that trans gel stuff, assembly gel, green, the blue, and put along the crankshaft. That will help slide the new seal on. You could use petroleum jelly or anything like that, or even some grease, just to help the seal slide on there and help prevent a dry startup. I'll probably put some actual oil on the seal itself, and then put the assembly gel, assembly lube on here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the pickup tube in. I'll show you all the two O-rings, and we'll slip it on the pickup tube. We're going to put some Loctite on that bolt, or in that one, those two studs, and then the bolt that holds the oil pump pickup tube in. It's medium strength Loctite, because we do not want that coming off. Those bolts backing out. We don't want the pickup tube falling. This cleaned up as well. So here's our original O-ring. That's the new one I got from GM. Appears to be the right one. Different color, but same diameter. Of course, it's just a little bit thicker because this one is crushed. And I don't really, this one, I mean, I don't see any tears in it. You know, this one was in good shape, other than just being collapsed a little bit. But it's still pliable, so it probably wouldn't have caused us a problem, at least not anytime soon. But you know, it's not worth risking for the cost of that little O-ring. So we're going to get our pickup tube, which is right here. I've got it cleaned up. Not perfect, but got the majority of the big stuff off of it. And we'll slip. Let me get some of this stuff. The stuff I'm talking about is this assembly goo. This is the light tack stuff. And this is just, it's good stuff to use for stuff like this. And that'll just help that thing slide in, make sure we don't do any damage to it. It's not going to hurt. That stuff, it'll break down in oil, so it's not going to hurt it. Just be on here. So let me let me grab my Loctite, and I'm gonna go stick this back up in there and tighten these down. Show you what I've got done. Pickup tube is back in place. Like I said, I put thread locker on those two studs that hold it and the bolt that holds it up there at the front. The way you get this thing in here is, you know, start the pickup tube in the oil pump hole, and then of course set it on top of these studs, and then push, you know, gently push it up in there, and you should feel the O-ring pop into the oil pump. So, and once I felt it pop in there, I just started these studs, and then I tightened up the bolt, or started the bolt and tightened it up that holds it up in the front. So it is in. Went in smoothly. You know, I don't feel like it tore the O-ring or anything like that. That's, I think, what causes the issues on this is normally that O-ring gets torn when it gets installed, and it seals for a while, and then eventually it starts sucking air. And so I put a lot of that trans gel stuff on it, so it was nice and slippery going on there. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna put some of that trans gel on the crankshaft, and we're gonna go slip the rear main cover on and get those bolts started and tighten it down, and then we'll be ready to put the oil pan back on. I think actually before I do that though, I'm gonna take some brake cleaner and just spray off here and just kind of make sure all that's good and clean. It was an installation tool. The center of it fits right in the end of the crankshaft, and then you slide it on, and it transfers the seal from over there to keep from tearing the seal, and it slipped on perfect. So what you want to do now though is you need to make sure that this cover is lined up with each side of the block. So I'm going to take a straight edge, run it across here, and make sure we're at the same level. We're also going to have to do that with the oil pan to make sure it's lined up just right, but we want to make sure that it's flat across here on both sides, you know, because you can rock this one way and it'll be inset here and sticking out over here. So you just want to make sure it's flat across both sides. So I'm going to do that. These are not tight, these are just drawn up to where it holds a little bit of pressure on it. Once I get this lined up, I'll go tighten these down, and then I'll torque them. Alright, so I just got the bottom two tightened. It is lined up. What you can do is you take took a straight edge, laid it across here, and took a flashlight and shined it behind it and looked through the other side, and you can see where the light escapes. And I just got one side where it should be and tightened it up, and then went over and did the other side, and didn't tighten it up, just snugged it a little bit to where it wouldn't move, and did the other side, and we are in good shape. Gasket sticks out a little bit, so just make sure you're at a spot where there's no gasket, right there, and right at the corner right there, and we are, you can feel it too. It's a nice transition. Perfect. So we're good there. I'm gonna go snug these up, and then I'm gonna come back and torque them down. I gotta look up the torque specs on them. We've got a clean oil pan now, so let's go put it on. And unfortunately, I've had this thing sitting out in the sun. It is hot. I feel like I'm gonna sit it in the fan for a minute. Let it cool down. gasket on it and hand tighten all the bolts, and then we'll need to start aligning everything, make sure everything's aligned just right, because I do not have an alignment tool. So it looks like these get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. I've just got these two barely snugged, and these are just basically finger tight, and they're just run up. I'm going to go ahead and put the oil pan on it before I torque these down, just to make sure everything lines up. But yeah, these get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. The oil pan bolts get torqued to 106 inch-pounds, and I'm not sure on these two. These are smaller, so they may get torqued less. I did not see where it stated on those, so we may need to dig a little deeper to find torque specs for these two bolts, or I may just might just snug them up. But I'm gonna go ahead and slip the oil pan up on there. I've got oil pan sitting over there, and the gasket and some right stuff. I'm gonna put right stuff at the corners right here. I have to wipe that oil off, and in the front too, where the front cover meets. You've got a little line here between the rear cover and the block. So we're gonna put just a little bit of right stuff right in there, and the same thing on the front cover on both sides. And that's the only spot I'm putting any silicone on this thing. It's just those four corners. Alright, so I got, you know, I use that straight edge to line this up, and then I put the oil pan on and made sure and just barely ran these up, all of them. Well, a couple of the front ones I haven't done yet, but and then made sure I could get these started, and then after I did that, I went ahead and torqued all these down, crisscrossing all around to 18 foot-pounds. So rear cover is done. Now we need to align the oil pan, and the problem I think we're gonna have is that you can align this edge right here, but you don't really have anything to align this edge over here. And probably if you got this side lined up, you would probably be okay, but I think just to be on the cautious side, I'm going to go grab the bell housing. I still haven't put the bell housing back on the transmission, so I'm just going to go get the bell housing and run a couple bell housing bolts in, and then we should be able to line the oil pump or the oil pan up to the bell housing, and should be able to get it perfect, because that's what it has to align to anyway. So if we get these, you know, get it bolted up to the engine, and then just get it to where it lines up to the pan as well, that should be correct spacing. Probably being a little overly cautious, probably could just line up this edge here, but I worry that this edge may be lined up and the pan could be, if you look at the pan, it could be like this or something, and call it, like if it was like that and you lined up this edge over here, this edge could be sticking out. So like I said, I feel like I'm being overly cautious here, but just want to make sure it's right. So let me go grab the bell housing. I'll spray the dowel pins with some oil, and should make it easy to get on and off, and we'll just throw a couple bell housing bolts in and get the pan lined up, and then we'll torque the pan down and then take the bell housing back off. This method, and maybe this method is not good or it's overcomplicated or what, but I think it's a good method. So what I did is I just I put 4 bolts in the bell housing to the block. I did not put the upper 2 in just because they're hard to get to, but it should be snugged up. It should be flush and in alignment around. And so then once that was done, I went and just barely snugged every single one, drawing the pan up even, kind of flipping around and doing them all around to make sure it draws up straight. And then I still haven't done these, but we're gonna do those last. Once those were just barely snugged, I went ahead and torqued these down. I say torqued it down, I just tightened them up, and to draw the pan up to the bell housing. So we've got even spacing. You can see it's tightened up to the block. We're using the bell housing to align the pan. So now that this is tightened up and where it should be, I'm going to just snug these up just a hair more, and then I'm going to back off these bolts, because this will prevent the pan from drawing up like it should. So I just want to tighten this just a little bit to make sure when I loosen these, the pan doesn't back away from the bell housing. So let me take care of that, and I'll go ahead and torque all these down, and then we can take the bell housing back off after these are torqued down. And I need to try to find torque specs on these. For right now, I'm just going to snug them up. Alright, I would say that alignment is perfect. All the oil pan bolts are torqued down, and we are ready to take the bell housing back off. And I'll put some oil in it and put a filter in it, and next we'll install the transmission back. But not too bad, and hopefully we have no leaks. I guess we can take this little centering deal off. And cover bolts torqued, oil pan bolts torqued, so it should be good. Alright, the flex plate is installed and torqued down. I put medium thread locker on these bolts. Do not want those backing out. And put an oil filter on it. We need to put some oil in it. Put this little plastic shield back on, lined up with the oil pan and the bell housing. And the only thing that's left is to put this cross member in, and we've got to plug in our low oil sensor. Now, I didn't show y'all, but this has a clip on it, and it's got a little window in the sensor for you to get a screwdriver in there and pop the clip loose. So that's hooked back up, and I've connected this wire connector here and the one that's over here on this side of the engine up in here. Where this bracket that holds all this attached to the side of the oil pan, that's connected. And yeah, so now just the 4 bolts for the cross member. And this is a little 1/4 inch air ratchet. It's super handy. I picked this up at a garage sale. Very handy, love it. You can just get it in a lot tighter spaces than anything else. And you know, it's about as much space as a 3/8 ratchet would take up, you know, just a regular ratchet. So you can pretty much get that thing in most anywhere. Done. So now just got to put the transmission back in. Now, of course, I'm doing this as I'm rebuilding the transmission. So if you're just trying to do these, there could be some easier ways to do it. Of course, if you're doing the rear main seal, you're gonna have to pull the transmission. But if you're just doing the oil pan gasket, you could do this without pulling the transmission. So yeah, I just gotta put some oil in it. What I'm gonna do is I'll put the empty box of the oil filter in the driver's seat, just to make sure I don't forget. The battery's disconnected on this anyway, but just to make sure I don't forget that it doesn't have oil in it, I'll put that on there. But I'm gonna go get some oil tomorrow and we'll put it in there. And I just barely snug this filter up to just keep any crud out. I'm gonna take the filter back off once I get some oil, pre-fill the filter, put it back on, and of course add oil to the engine oil pan. But yeah, everything's back together and we've got no leftover bolts, so that's good. Always good project when you don't have anything left over. So yeah, next video on this will be putting the transmission back in, and of course flushing cooler lines, all that kind of stuff. And this dipstick's all nasty now that it's been sitting here for 6 months. Let's clean that up. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and subscribe to see more.